All right, let's dive into another deep dive. Today, we're tackling the world of wellness influencers,
Ooh, that's a good one.
but specifically the dark side, like the underbelly of online fame.
Right, right.
We're focusing on Belle Gibson's story.
Okay.
She's an Australian wellness influencer, and she built her whole persona on this claim that she cured her terminal brain cancer.
With diet and alternative medicine, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
It's wild. So the main thing we're looking at here is a Time article. It's about the Netflix series Apple Cider Vinegar,
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
based on Belle's story. So if you've seen it, you kind of have an idea. But buckle up, because it gets even crazier.
I bet. The internet, especially when it comes to health, it's like a breeding ground for, misinformation.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's what's so fascinating about Belle's story. Like, how did she pull this off?
Right.
So her rise to fame, it's pretty remarkable. Like, she just kind of popped up on Instagram in 2013, calling herself Healing Belle.
Healing Bell, yeah.
And her feed was all like gorgeous food photos.
Oh, the aesthetics, right.
Yeah, and inspirational messages, about self-healing
Yeah.
and defying the odds as this young woman facing terminal brain cancer.
Right, like the ultimate underdog story.
Exactly. So you've got the visual appeal, you've got the compelling story,
Uh-huh.
and the promise of, healing through natural methods. It's like the perfect recipe to go viral.
Oh, totally. It was practically made for Instagram.
And it did go viral. Within just a couple years, she had this massive following. She launched her app, The Whole Pantry.
Oh, yeah. That was huge. Wasn't it like a best-selling app or something?
It was a bestseller. And she even got a cookbook deal.
Wow.
I mean, it's estimated she made like $500,000 from all of this.
$500,000. Wow.
Yeah. So she's living the dream, right?
Yeah.
Engaging with her followers, giving advice, recommending remedies.
And tapping into that whole apple cider vinegar as a cure-all trend, right?
Yeah. That's where the Netflix series gets its title.
I see.
But here's where it gets interesting. Two journalists, Bo Donnelly and Nick Toscano, they were working for the Age newspaper in Melbourne.
Okay.
They got this tip questioning Belle's whole cancer diagnosis.
Oh, so someone smells something fishy.
Right. It's like, who would even question that?
That's crazy. What did they do?
They were like digital detectives. They went deep into her social media, interviewed people who knew her, and they even talked to oncologists, cancer specialists.
Right.
And those experts were like, yeah, her story doesn't add up.
So they started finding holes in her story.
Oh, yeah. Like,
Wow.
for one, her lifestyle. It was glamorous, lots of travel, luxury.
It doesn't really scream terminal illness.
Right. And she always seemed to avoid hospitals and doctors.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
There was even this story about her having a seizure at her son's 4th birthday party,
Oh, wow.
but she refused to let anyone call an ambulance.
Really?
Yeah, didn't want to go to the hospital.
That's bizarre.
It was like a major red flag for people around her, but she just stuck to her story.
So what did the journalists do with all this information? They couldn't just accuse her outright, could they?
Well, they knew they needed more than just inconsistencies. They focused on Belle's unfulfilled charitable promises.
Ah, I see. So they used a concrete lie about the donations to kind of unravel the bigger deception.
Right.
Oh, totally. So what happened when they published their findings?
In March 2015, their expose came out in The Age. Public backlash was huge.
I bet. Did she try to defend herself?
Oh, at first, yeah. She went on Facebook saying her work had helped hundreds of thousands of lives.
Classic non-denial denial.
But the evidence was piling up. She couldn't keep up the act.
Right. So what happened then?
3 months later, she confessed.
She admitted it.
In the Australian Women's Weekly, she finally came clean. Admitted that she made the whole cancer thing up.
Wow. That must have been a bombshell.
It was. Shook the wellness community. A lot of people felt betrayed, obviously.
Yeah, I can imagine. But the biggest question is why? Why would she do that?
Right. What would drive someone to create such a massive lie and potentially put others at risk? It's a question that lingers. It's a tough question to wrap your head around, isn't it? Like, why would someone go to such lengths to make up a story like that? Especially about something as serious as cancer.
Yeah, trying to understand the why behind these sorts of deceptions is, it's a real challenge.
Right. And it's easy to just label someone like Belle as, attention seeking.
Exactly. But it's rarely that simple, right?
No, definitely not.
So Donnelly and Toscano, these journalists we talked about, they didn't just want to expose the lie.
Hmm.
They actually went deeper, like way back into her, talking to people who knew her even as a teenager.
Wow, so they really went all out for this book, huh?
Yeah, they did a deep dive of their own, and in their book, The Woman Who Fooled the World,
Okay.
they uncover this pattern of Belle making up medical stories, even going back to her teenage years.
So it wasn't just this one big lie. It was,
Right. Like, this wasn't just a one-time thing.
wow.
It makes you wonder about that seizure she had at her son's birthday party. You know, the one where she refused to go to the hospital.
Yeah, right when suspicions about her cancer story were starting to grow.
Exactly. Do you think that was another attempt to get sympathy, maybe deflect attention?
It's a disturbing thought, but it also makes you think, like, how do we, as people who are constantly bombarded with information online, how do we know what's real and what's not, especially when it comes to our health?
That's the million-dollar question these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in a compelling story, especially when it's packaged so well.
Right, and Belle's story, I mean, it fits into this bigger trend we're seeing in the wellness world, right? Where these really complex health issues get simplified.
Yeah, and then there's this promise of easy solutions, quick fixes.
And when you're vulnerable or desperate for a solution, it's easy to fall for that.
Absolutely. So developing critical thinking skills, that's crucial in this day and age.
Yeah, like a healthy dose of skepticism can't hurt,
Right. Definitely not.
but how do we do that without becoming, like, totally cynical?
Right. It's a balance.
Yeah.
Being open to new ideas, but also asking the right questions like, where's this information coming from? Is there actual evidence to back it up, or is it just based on personal stories, anecdotes?
Okay.
And look for any inconsistencies, any red flags.
So basically, don't just accept what you see at face value. Do your own digging.
Exactly. And remember, popularity doesn't automatically mean credibility.
Right. Just because something has tons of likes or shares doesn't make it true.
Absolutely. That's so important to keep in mind.
It's like we need a guidebook for navigating this online world of health information.
We kind of do. So what are some practical steps we can take to protect ourselves from, falling for this kind of misinformation, especially when it comes to our health?
Yeah, where do we even begin?
Well, first and foremost, consult with reputable sources, talk to your doctor,
Mm.
do some research on credible websites like the National Institutes of Health, the Mayo Clinic, those kinds of places.
So go to the experts, not just the influencers.
You got it. And be cautious of anyone claiming they have a miracle cure
Right.
or a one-size-fits-all solution. Health is complex, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Definitely not. And there's a huge difference between promoting a healthy lifestyle and actually claiming to cure a disease.
That's an important point. Like, encouraging healthy habits, that's one thing.
Right.
But saying a specific diet or practice can cure cancer, that's a whole other level.
And unfortunately, that line gets blurred a lot, especially in this online wellness space.
Yeah.
It's easy to take advantage of people's vulnerabilities with those promises of quick fixes and perfect health.
And Belle's story is a perfect example, right?
Mm-hmm.
She presented this visually appealing emotional story that played on people's desire for hope and simple solutions.
And because it was all through this perfectly curated Instagram feed, it felt authentic,
Yeah, relatable.
But underneath it all was this web of lies. It's really messed up to think someone could exploit people like that for their own gain.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to be vigilant,
Yeah.
to question what we see, verify information.
And remember that things aren't always as they appear.
So going back to the Netflix series, Apple Cider Vinegar, it wasn't just Belle's story that inspired it.
Right. There was another wellness influencer, Jess Ainscough.
Jess Ainscough. Yeah.
She actually gained a big following for rejecting conventional cancer treatments.
Really?
Yeah, she opted for alternative methods instead.
Wow. So she had a similar message to Belle, but she actually did have cancer, right?
That's the tragic part of it all. Jess truly believed in these alternative approaches,
Okay.
but she ended up passing away at just 29 years old.
Oh, that's so young.
And her mother, who followed her daughter's advice, she also died from cancer.
That's heartbreaking. It really highlights how dangerous it can be to reject evidence-based medicine, especially when dealing with serious illnesses.
It's a harsh reminder that while trying alternative approaches is fine, it's crucial to do so with the guidance of real medical professionals.
Definitely. It's worth mentioning that even though the Netflix series might make it seem like they were connected, Belle and Jess weren't actually friends.
Right. They weren't friends, but they were part of similar wellness circles.
Okay.
And there's this one detail that's really interesting. Belle showed up at Jess's funeral.
Fine.
And she was extremely emotional, like sobbing uncontrollably.
What's so significant about that?
Well, remember, this was just days after those journalists, Donnelly and Toscano, had sent Belle those questions about her story, the inconsistencies.
Oh, right. They were closing in on her.
Exactly. So some people believe that Belle's dramatic display at the funeral, it was calculated, a way to gain sympathy as her own lies were about to be exposed.
That's chilling.
It is. And it brings us back to these two stories of wellness influencers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Both promoting unproven remedies, both with these really tragic outcomes.
It makes you question the responsibility these online gurus have and the platforms that give them a voice.
Absolutely. It raises huge questions about accountability and the harm that misinformation can cause.
It's a bigger issue than just these individual influencers.
You're right. We're living in this age of information overload, and it's so hard to filter out the truth from the lies.
Right.
And it takes a lot of effort to navigate this world without becoming jaded.
Yeah, so it's about being discerning, not dismissive.
Exactly. There are legitimate wellness practices and practitioners out there.
Right.
It's about doing your homework and finding what's right for you while also watching out for anything that sounds too good to be true.
Sound advice. But there's something else about Belle's story that I keep thinking about, like beyond just the surface level stuff.
Okay.
What is it about her deception, psychologically, that made her construct this whole web of lies, knowing the potential fallout? That's something psychologists and criminologists have been trying to figure out for years.
Right.
There's no easy answer, but there are some interesting theories.
Let's talk about those theories, shall we? Belle's story, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
It does. It goes way beyond just one influencer's lies. It raises these huge questions about truth, deception, and how these narratives, especially in the wellness space, can be so powerful online.
Yeah, and I think what's really unsettling is the impact, right? Like, this isn't just about financial gain or betraying people's trust.
Right.
Belle's actions actually damaged public trust in, like, genuine health information.
Yeah.
And even in healthcare institutions themselves.
Oh, absolutely. It's like she threw this pebble into a pond, and the ripples, they just keep spreading.
It makes you think about all the people who might have been swayed by her claims, potentially delaying or even foregoing, necessary medical treatment.
Exactly. And that's the really heartbreaking part. Someone who's already battling a serious illness, they're vulnerable, desperate for a cure.
Right.
And to think they might make a life-altering decision based on false hope, it's devastating.
It's a stark reminder that this isn't just about abstract ideas.
Right.
We're talking about real-world consequences.
Absolutely. Real people, real lives affected. And it goes beyond individual choices, too. This erosion of trust in evidence-based medicine, it can impact the whole healthcare system.
I hadn't thought about it that way. How so?
Well, when people start doubting conventional medicine, they might turn to alternative therapies, therapies that haven't been properly tested or proven effective.
Right.
And that can lead to misdiagnosis, inadequate treatment, sometimes even preventable deaths.
That's heavy.
It is. And it puts so much pressure on healthcare professionals who are constantly having to fight misinformation, debunking myths.
You must feel like an uphill battle.
It is. And social media algorithms don't help, sensationalized health claims, conspiracy theories, they spread like wildfire online.
It's like this constant race against misinformation.
Right. Exactly. Facts can barely keep up with these captivating narratives. And once those narratives take root,
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to counter them with evidence and logic. It's like we're in this weird time where emotion and personal beliefs often trump scientific consensus.
So what can we even do about it? Is there any way to, push back against this wave of misinformation, especially when it comes to health and wellness?
It's a huge challenge, no doubt, but I don't think it's impossible. We need to empower people to become, savvy information consumers.
Heavy cooking.
Yeah, more discerning. And I think it starts with education.
Yeah.
Promoting media literacy, teaching critical thinking skills early on.
So give people the tools to actually evaluate information.
Exactly. To sift through the noise and figure out what's real. Teach them how to spot bias, question sources, seek out evidence-based information. And this has to happen everywhere. Schools, homes, communities.
It's a group effort, for
Yes.
sure. And we need to hold social media platforms accountable too, right?
100%. They have a responsibility to flag or remove misinformation that could actually harm people.
Yeah.
Prioritize credible sources over, the sensationalized stuff.
It's about fostering a healthier information ecosystem.
Right, not about censorship.
Exactly.
But it's not just on the platforms, it's on us too as individuals. We need to be more aware of what we consume and share online.
Think before you share.
Yes. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And when it comes to health claims,
Yeah.
talk to a real doctor. Don't just rely on Dr. Google or social media influencers for medical advice.
Your health is too important to gamble with.
Couldn't agree more. In the end, it all boils down to individual responsibility. We all have to step up and be critical thinkers, especially in this crazy digital age.
We can't just be passive consumers of information.
Yep.
We got to engage with it, question it, evaluate it.
And be careful about what we spread to others.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, I think that just about wraps up our deep dive into the wild world of wellness influencers and the dark side of online fame.
It's been a fascinating journey, for sure.
And a little unsettling, honestly.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
But only when it's accurate and trustworthy. So stay curious, stay critical, and stay healthy.
See you on the next deep dive.